All right, good morning, everybody. I don't think you've heard from me, at least through video, for a couple of days, but I have been posting in Classroom, and I hope you've been following up on the materials and trying to keep up with your work, and that you've started your Create Performance task. I had a couple of requests for some deadlines and some sort of structure for how we're going through this. So I created a document yesterday that has all that information laid out. So make sure you check that latest Classroom post from yesterday so you can see all of that laid out for you. And I am holding you to those dates. Those are things that we need to get done so that we make sure that we meet the deadline that we have. If you look at those dates, you can see that we finish at least, I think it's a week or two earlier before the actual material is due for the AP test. And there's a huge reason for that. So that's going to take into account any technical problems, any hiccups, anything that might trip you up during the way, and gives us just a little bit of flexibility and wiggle room to make sure that we could all get done on time, especially if you still have to go back and finish up aspects of your Explore Performance task, and even just to review it before you turn it in. So all that was done on purpose to make sure we give us that kind of padded room. And then hopefully being back in the classroom during that time, we'll be able to finish out the year, do some semblance of a final project, and bring our year to an appropriate close. All right, so in addition, you now have access to your official school account emails. That was opened up for you recently. And if you want to see how that works, just go ahead and check out one of the latest. I just posted about this in Classroom today. Check out that post. You can walk through the guide, and you should be able to email everybody directly now. And you will be getting emails from me to stay in contact, and anything that you might need. All right. So the purpose of this stream today is to walk through a couple things. One is the notification that you need to be looking at and following that checklist for the due dates, just to make sure that you stay on track. Otherwise, I know it's kind of hard to kind of pace yourself to make sure that you're getting everything done on time. But the second is I want to spend a couple of minutes reviewing what is called an exemplar. So an exemplar is an ideal example of something. So it's going to be an exemplar of a Create Performance task that was created. And you can also find this in code.org on the homepage for, I think it's Unit 5. And I'm going to switch my screens over right now so that you can see that. And right here. So this is Lesson 1 for the Create Performance task. Let me go to my previous screen so you can see it. Not Unit 5. This is Chapter 3 for this section. So the Create Performance task. And if you click right there on where it says Lesson Overview, where it says Reviewing the Task, right here for Lesson Overview, you get a list of a bunch of materials to help get you started. So one is the task directions for the students. That is from College Board. That is official. The second is the scoring guidelines. And I have a lot of these posted separately in Classroom. You can find them there. Then we have just a bunch of samples of what's been done before. A video sample, a written response sample, and all these different samples. I urge you to go through and take a look at those. And I will probably even make it like an official assignment to go through one and take a look at it. But I'm not going to do that at the current moment. All I want to do today, and I want to keep this fairly short, is I'm going to go over two things. One is that I'm going to go over the Grumpy Cat Exemplar Create Performance Task code. And I want to go over this because it's a fairly simple example that meets all the needs of the Create Performance task and got, I think, just about all the points. So I'm going to go over that. And I'm also going to go over the Grumpy Cat Exemplar Create Performance task written responses. So just those two things. So if you want to kind of follow along or just go back to this after, you can. I'm going to start with the actual code, which is right here. I already have it up. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to run the app and kind of demonstrate this, and then we'll take a look at some of the code and what it's doing. So if I click right here, I can see that I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 5 different screens. I have a welcome screen, game screen, store screen, which you'll see what it is in a moment, lose screen, a win screen. So right now you could be able to, everybody should be able to recreate this screen fairly easily, just an intro screen. And then we have an event button right here. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. And you click on the cat. And that's it. That should look really familiar because everybody created an app clicker game. So the question should be, wait, that's all I have to do? Almost. So I want you to also take a look at some of these other things that it's doing. Every time I click, the score goes up and it gives lives. Well, how do the lives go down? Well, if you end up clicking on the screen and missing the cat, the scores go down. If it goes down to 0, you're going to lose. So pretty simple. Everybody has done all of this so far, so you know that it's pretty accessible. They have one other thing where you click here and it says the pet store, and you get to buy these different items. So I'm going to buy this one for 500, and it decrements the points available, and it changes how you're able to score. Now, this might seem kind of interesting or strange, but this was added on for a very specific reason. Because with these additional functions, that's what actually made it meet the requirements of the create performance task. And I'll talk about why in just a moment. So let me go back to the game. And now when I click, you can see that there is a different scoring system than there was before. And the score goes up by 2 instead of by 1. So there's some sort of function algorithm that took place to change that. So then I got out, and I could try again if we want, and the whole thing gets reset. So for the most part, nothing that different than what we've already done with our assigned lessons within code.org. So what was special about this? Why did this meet the needs of the create performance task? So let's take a look at some of the code first. So we have variables, we have functions that do the appropriate abstraction, and we're still going to talk about abstraction in a more formal setting. And I think I'll save that even for Monday. But we have some algorithms here that are taking place as well, like this. And like, let me see where the other one is, because right here. And it's even labeled for us. So this is the main algorithm that handles all purchasing behavior. And these two things right here are the requirements. This is the key that really made it different, so it wasn't just the same as the app clicker game, but also made it so it met the needs of the create performance task. Because the create performance task requires a function, it requires an algorithm, and it requires a child algorithm. So here's what that means. You have a main algorithm that is a set of instructions that runs in a somewhat dynamic way. And that's what this is right here. But then we have this. That multiplier is a child algorithm where it runs as a result of this. So you have to have two algorithms. One is a child where it runs only when this one is set. So this belongs to this in many ways. And it's required. I'll go into a little bit more detail of how that's labeled and how that's written out in the actual instructions for the create performance task, and talk a little bit more about what an algorithm is. I'm trying to put something together that is a little bit of a clear definition of this is an algorithm, this is not an algorithm, so that when you're going through and you're setting up your code, you make sure that it meets those needs and you get those points, because it should be fairly easily. It should be fairly easy just to follow that type of list and make sure that you're meeting that need. Okay. And then they have a second child algorithm too, which I also think is required. So those are all connected. And this is also a really good example of why comments in your code are helpful. So it's giving proper reference to everything here. They're also putting that because they have this listed in code.org, so they want to make sure that nobody is copying this. Oh, yeah, do not copy any of this code. You could use it for inspiration, but you make sure you do not copy and paste anything. You could use it as a framework, you could use it as a starting idea, but make sure that you're not copying any of this. And even the idea of using Grumpy Cat, please don't do that at all. They're listing this in code as an example, so you can guarantee they will know if anything from here is being reused. Please don't do that. And then down here at the bottom, they have reference for where all of the photos came from. From what I understand, that's somewhat optional, but I think it is just really good practice in writing code to begin with. Okay. Now let's take a look at some of the written responses, because you're going to have to do the exact same thing. So 2A, there's a video that goes along with this. You could look in, well, you can just follow this link right here and you can see the video. I'm not going to show it today. I'm going to wait until I do a full demo of how to do your own screen recording. But 2A, provide a written response or audio narration in your video that identifies the programming language, identifies the purpose of your program, and explains what the video illustrates. Right. So this program was done in JavaScript using the AppLab environment. The purpose of the program is to be a fun game for users to play. To play the game, you must click the cat over and over again to increase your score. Using points, you can also buy items in the store, which increase the points you gain on each click. And it goes on, you guys are able to read, so I would encourage reading all of that. Second part, describe the incremental and iterative developmental process of your program, focusing on two distinct points in that process. Describe the difficulties and or opportunities you encountered and how you were resolved or incorporated, and how they were resolved or incorporated. In your description, clearly indicate whether the development described was collaborative or independent. At least one of the points must refer to independent program development. Must not exceed 200 words. So this is also a good point to take to keep track of, that you do have a word limit here. So make sure that you are concise in your language, but that you are still answering each of the required points of 2B. In the due date checklist that I posted yesterday, I think it was yesterday that I posted it, I have a note about keeping track of your development process, so that every day that you work on it, maybe make a couple notes, or when you come across something that is pretty important to the development of your code, that you may take a note of it. It doesn't mean that you're going to include every single one of those notes that you have written down, but you will at least have all the info that you encountered along the way and won't have to try to remember back. It's really important to kind of chronicle how you came up with this, and I'm pretty sure this is how they're also using I'm pretty sure they're also using this as a plagiarism check, because if you don't have a pretty good outlined thought process, then it kind of becomes pretty clear pretty quickly what you may or may not have done on your own. So please make sure that you're doing this. Please make sure that you're keeping track of what you've done along the way, and then you have this really solid example of what that looks like. Such as, I built this game by extending a simple clicker game I built in class. I completed the programming for this project independently. Those are both very, very clear statements where it should not be any mistake about how this was developed. I knew the biggest feature I wanted to add was the store, so early on I worked on building that. And the reason why that would have been a big point is because that's where the main algorithm was that this person, this individual who developed this, had to take credit for and had to be able to explain. All right. Next, 2C, capture and paste a program code segment that implements an algorithm marked with an oval in the section, and that it is fundamental for your program to achieve its intended purpose. This is extremely important. The algorithm that you develop has to be extremely important to the program that you're writing. So important that it wouldn't even work correctly or work as intended without that algorithm. It has to be fundamental and foundational to your program. And then it says, the code segment must be an algorithm that you developed individually on your own. So if you are collaborating, which I don't think anybody is, this is something you have to write on your own without help from anybody else. I can't help. I could provide some advice and pointers in terms of clarification of what an algorithm is, but that's all I could do. I can't even look at your code and tell you whether or not it qualifies as an algorithm. That is something you have to qualify on your own. But once again, on Monday, I will be going over the algorithmic portion, and I'm hoping that it will kind of narrow down any misconceptions about what is required. Okay, so with 2C, you must include 2 or more algorithms and must integrate mathematical and or logical concepts. And those logical concepts, the mathematical and logical concepts are pretty easy. They are pretty simple. So, for instance, a logical concept is this: an if statement. An if statement is a logical concept. If this happens, then this happens. If this happens, this happens. Else if this happens. Else this happens. Those are all logical concepts. Loops are also logical concepts. While this value is greater than this other value, do this. Loop through this. That is a logical concept. A mathematical concept is, if you look in the coding window here where it says yarn equals yarn count plus 1, that's a mathematical concept. Anything that involves math is a mathematical concept. It could also be random. A random number that's generated, that I think it would probably qualify as more of a logical concept than a mathematical one, although actually, they probably would qualify it as mathematical. So either way, those are things that have to be part of the algorithm. So then describe how each algorithm with your selected algorithm functions independently as well as in combination with others to form a new algorithm. And that's where that child algorithm idea comes into place. So this one right here, where it says main algorithm handles all purchasing behavior, this functions on its own. The child algorithm works as a result of the above. And that's how that is. So you need one main algorithm that can function on its own, and then 2 additional algorithms that function, let's say, in support of the main algorithm. And I think there's some material that helps to kind of outline this and show kind of like a visual guide. I will try to find that and post that, because I really feel that this is the core challenge in the program. 1, to come up with the idea. 2nd, to develop the algorithm. And 3rd, to make sure that it meets the requirement of the standalone functional algorithm and the 2 children. And it isn't that you don't know how to do it or can't write the code. It's simply making sure that it functions in the way that they are looking for. And I think that's where the biggest challenge lies. And for those students that don't get the point, I think it's because of that. Please make sure to take the time to read through the explanation this person wrote for the 2 algorithms. I think that will be really, really helpful. Okay, 2D. Capture and paste a program code segment that contains an abstraction you developed. We need to review an abstraction as well. We have gone over it this year, but we're going to have to review it. All right, so capture and paste a program code segment that contains an abstraction you developed individually on your own, marked with a rectangle in section 3 below. This abstraction must integrate mathematical and logical concepts. So once again, it has to contain those 2 things. Explain how your abstraction helped manage the complexity of your program. So in most cases, not all cases, in most cases, a function is an abstraction. They do have a function here. It says function set visible items. So this individual is claiming that this function helped manage the complexity of these things. So notice that there are several set property and several if score comments here, not comments, lines of code. Well, all of this stuff is being managed by this single function. So this single function, when you call it set visible items, is managing all of this. So that is the idea behind managing complexity. All this complexity was managed simply by being able to call this one single function. But when you do this, make sure that you're pasting in and you're putting in the function, not the call to the function. Even though the calling of the function is technically an abstraction, it's this that they want to see. They need to see the function that is managing it. 3, program code. You have to capture and paste your entire program code, which they have here. And for this, you could simply do a screen capture. And I will... On the Macs, it's really easy. On the PC, it's a little bit different, and I'll try to do a quick demo of how to do that. when it gets to be that time, I'll do a combined demo of how to do a screen capture, how to do the square and circle around the code, and how to record your screen. I'll make all of that like 2 or 3 lessons within the last week or two that I have for the deadlines. I don't want to talk about it now at this point. It's not a focus. Your focus right now is getting the code written and making sure it meets the needs of the abstraction and the functions. The algorithms. Okay. Capture and paste your entire program code. Mark with an oval a segment program that implements the algorithm that you created for your program. Mark with a rectangle the segment of code that represents the abstraction. And they just want to see where that is, where that exists in your code. Which should be pretty easy because you've already done all the hard work before this. Make sure to include comments or acknowledgments for program code that has been written by somebody else. And that's it. And I say that's it, and I'm not saying it that way to minimize the amount of work this is or the complexity in making sure that things get answered correctly. But if you have a clear understanding of what an abstraction is and what an algorithm is and what the goal of this is, then it becomes that much more manageable, and that's really what I think we're shooting for. But then again, this is not a complicated program. It's a decent idea. The integration of this store is a great idea, and this screen alone and this function is what took it from a basic program that we've done in code.org to being something that is a mildly interesting program that meets all the needs of an AP test to get all the points. So you do not have to create something that is overly complex. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You could take something that we've already done, put a new skin on it, make it your own, add 1 or 2 features that meets the need like this person did with his pet store, and you're done. Please don't make it overly complex. All right, so I'm just about done showing what I want to show for today. And then the next part is simply, please make sure that you're staying in touch. If you have questions, ask them. You have access to email. Email me every day if you need to. Ask as many questions as you need. This is weird for me too. I don't like not being in the classroom with everybody because we're missing that one-on-one contact. And I know that some people haven't even checked in yet, so I'm concerned. If you have friends in the class, make sure that you've contacted them. Let them know that I have content up in Classroom for them. School is still continuing. Still going on. All your teachers are still posting content, and I think all of you already know that. I'm trying to make sure that I post only materials that I think you need to continue and to succeed. I'm trying not to overdo it, but we're doing the best we can. This is kind of new for us, as you've probably heard before. Please stay in contact. Please keep up with your work and your deadlines. Have a good Friday and have an even better weekend. And I will hear from, you'll hear from me soon, but I hope to hear from all of you soon as well. Take care.